Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, will make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gaelic Lives podcast. You're very welcome to our Monday review show, and we're looking back at all the action from the weekend. And the GL team are joined by Damien Donohoe this morning from the We Are Cavan podcast, and a very happy Damien Donohoe on a Monday morning, I must add. Damien, result of the weekend: Cavan overcoming Mayo and Castlebar.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me okay? But I'm told that the Wi-Fi on Cloud9 is really good, but up here on Cloud9, it's top quality. We're enjoying life at the moment, so yeah.
An unexpected win, I suppose, Damien. And I know with John Clark on the podcast last week, and he certainly wasn't writing Calvin off. He felt that I don't know if he called an upset, but he certainly felt they would give Mayo their fill of it, and they done more than that to actually come out with a 3-point win.
Yeah. No, but definitely unexpected. I think in the post-match interview, I said to Raymond, with the utmost respect, where did that come from? Because there wasn't anything coming down the road to Castlebar that we were thinking, yeah, there's going to be a win here. You're missing Grode McKiernan and James Smith off the bat, who are two of your top 4 or 5 players, who have been playing really, really well for Cavan this season. You hear Jason McLaughlin is out injured as well. And then there was lots of rumours that Paddy Lynch had another setback. So everything just felt like this just isn't possible. We're not at the level to go and compete here. So I have to say I was very pessimistic going down the road. Now I had Michael Hannon with me, and he was trying to hammer into me that, look, at Mayo aren't the world beaters that they maybe once were, and there may be a chance here, but I just couldn't see it. I'd seen the Connacht final. I was impressed with Mayo. I thought their work ethic, everything about them looked good that day, bar maybe a bit of composure. But now, look, at all the credit has to go to the Cavan management, to the Cavan players, and it's all to the Cavan players. They were so good. They worked so hard. They set the tempo. You'd have seen from maybe the clips on the Sunday game last night, Killian the Gunner with a dispossession on Aidan O'Shea in the first couple of minutes. He done another one about a minute and a half later. Niall Carlin won 2 balls out in front of Ryan O'Donoghue in the first 10 minutes, and the tempo was set. Cavan were winning the turnovers, were creating chances, probably actually with 10 minutes gone, 15 minutes gone in the game. Cavan had 4 wides on the board and were level pegging. I think it was 3-all at that stage, and you're thinking, oh God, have we blown a gasket here? And Mayo then get a player sent off, and you're thinking that, right, okay, Cavan should push on, but Mayo hit 3 points during that period when they had Neary black carded. So coming in then at halftime, 3 points down, you were kind of thinking to yourself that we should be in a better position here. Now, where we were in the back of the stand, you couldn't appreciate the strength of the wind. But when you get out onto the pitch, there was a significant wind with Mayo in that first half. So a 3-point deficit at halftime wasn't a bad result. And Cavan came out after the break, and the goal from Gerard Smith set the tone, and they just kept on going from that point. They completely dominated. They hit 1-2 in the first 3 minutes, and then they went on a run from the 19th minute to the 35th minute of scoring 5 points unanswered. That just really put the game to bed.
You mentioned, I suppose, the injuries and stuff, Damien, that Calvin had, but Paddy Lynch did come on. I think that's his first appearance, and it's a year probably. Is it? Was it last May he done his cruciate? So he come on, and he got a point.
Yeah. It was a little over a year ago. So it was in the Ulster was that a semi-final against Tyrone? No, quarter-final against Tyrone. He played that game, then he trained during the week and done his cruise ship. So he was a little over 12 months out. And the biggest roar of the day, bar the final whistle, was when Paddy Lynch came on. And Cavan supporters delighted to see him back and at it. He had 2 shots on goal. One was a free. Like you're out for a year, and you have setback after setback. And the first free he's given was on the 45-meter line on the sideline, and he had a go at it, and he had the distance on it. He just missed it. It went slightly to the right hand side of the goals and wide. But then the next opportunity came in after a really good turnover by Evan Crowe, youngster who had a brilliant game. He finished it off onto the left foot, like onto his. Well, he doesn't have a weaker foot, Paddy Lynch, to be fair to him, but on what would be described as his weaker foot, and sailed that over the bar. And the injuries even during the game got worse, because Barry Donnelly and Sean McAvoy went off in the first half injured, and both of them were playing really well. They had the beating of their direct opponent. They were after taking on their men on a couple of occasions to create overlaps, and you could see they had the pace to burn away from the Mayo defenders that were on them. So it wasn't just in the build-up to the game. There was injuries during the game. To lose 2 key forwards like that was huge. But Cian Madden came on, Oisin Brady came on. Great to see Oisin Brady back as well. He's another definite starter for Cavan when he's fully fit. So he hasn't played since the Roscommon League game. So bit by bit, the panel looked like it might be getting a bit stronger, and then a bit weaker, and maybe a bit stronger again. You just don't know.
So I think that the result, Damien, just it blows that group wide open, because we know Donegal and Tyrone are in that group as well, and I think Cavan have Donegal at home in their next game, and then obviously a neutral one against Tyrone, and you would feel maybe Cavan owe Tyrone one, so Cavan, they're looking up certainly, and it's more or less qualified for the preliminary quarterfinal at least, you would think, at this stage.
Yeah. Just to correct you, Cavan owed Tyrone an awful lot more than one. We owe about 100 at this stage, and that would be nothing sweeter than getting one up on Niall's crew over there. But look at Cavan. Jim McGuinness was at the game yesterday, a crowd puller, so he'll be fully aware and ready for it. It does look. It changes the group dramatically. Mayo now have to go their next game out in 2 weeks' time. They'll have to go to Tyrone and beat Tyrone up there, which on yesterday's performance, I'd be surprised if they go and do, and I don't think they'll beat Donegal. So it may come down to, even if they do pick up one win, it might come against Tyrone, but I don't expect it to come against Tyrone, to be honest. So it probably in some ways it throws the group wide open, but maybe closes it off in another way, because unless Mayo win a game, then the group is done. You know that the preliminary quarterfinals is just going to who's going to get top spot, and that's kind of it really. But it gives Cavan great hope, and that's what has changed, because there was a bit of doom and gloom around the county after the Tyrone performance, or lack thereof, and Raymond Galligan and the players actually referenced how disappointed they were with how they performed up in Oma, and how passive they were. This wasn't passive. This was high energy, really, really determined defending, and in a super counter attack. Like the Paddy Lynch score was replicated time and time again by Cavan in that game, where Cian Riley came up from fullback. He had his best game in a Cavan jersey, an absolutely outstanding performance by him. But we just kept on breaking lines, breaking at speed, and catching Mayo on the counter attack. And it was really good to watch. It was really exciting to watch. Oisin Kiernan hitting 2-pointer. Darragh McVeety was in a brilliant battle with Enda Hessian. And by the end of it, he got himself on top of it. And then when Paddy Durkin came in, that was the biggest roar for the Mayo support. But Darragh McVeety welcomed him to the game as well, which was just good to see. Like nothing too serious, but a good shoulder, and said, "Listen, you're coming into a battle now, Durkin. You're not gonna walk all over us." So, there was a lot of positives from Cavan on Sunday. Thank God.
And 2 games left. Sky's the limit then for Cavan, Damien, going forward.
Well, do you know what it does? Like, we were just looking on the way home at it, like the way 2 of the groups have fallen. There's there's going to be teams that will make that preliminary quarter final that Cavan will say, okay, on our day we can beat them, and that's changed now. Like, so if you look at the group with, is it Monaghan, Louth,
Down and Clare.
Clare and Down, and then you have the Kerry, Roscommon, Meath, and who's the fourth team?
Park.
In that. You're kind of saying, okay, you expect maybe Monaghan and Kerry the top down groups, and then your preliminaries would be 2 of the 6 or 4 of the 6 remaining teams. And you'd say if Cavan put in a performance like they did yesterday, they could get a win against those teams. So it just changes the complete outlook in Cavan now, that instead of us saying that the All-Ireland series, which I was on the We Are Cavan podcast during the week, and I said, I think looking at this group ahead, I'd rather be in the Tailteann Cup. How wrong was I? It changes everything around that now, that you're looking, you're saying, okay, there's games we can win here now. So no, the players deserve massive credit for it. We're looking up, all right. We're definitely looking up. The big thing now will be, even regardless of result, but can the performance stay at that level? Now, the expectation would be that maybe James Smith and Grove McKiernan might be back before the end of the All-Ireland series. Sean McAvoy, it looked like a broken nose that he came off with yesterday. Barry Donnelly was coming away with on crutches, so it's hard to know whether he'll be able to play anything. But if you got James Smith, Road, Sean McAvoy back in there, you're significantly strengthening the squad. Killian Clark didn't get game time. I'm presuming that there was a little bit of an injury there to him yesterday as well. So there is still a bit of strengthening to come in this Cavan squad.
Brilliant stuff, Damien. Good man. Thanks very much for coming on. That's Cavan, top of the table after 1 week. So they're happy up in Cavan. We're going to take a short break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and then we'll be back to discuss all the rest of the weekend's action. So, Damien, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks a million, lads.
Cheers, Damien.
Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, London Derry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, we'll make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
So the only other Ulster game in the All-Ireland series was Down on Clare on Mall. Down, while Cavan was probably, an unexpected result. Down winning away to Clare maybe wasn't unexpected, but the margin of victory probably was.
It probably was, and I think yesterday's performance, it probably sums up, the amount of credit Down have deserved for the last couple of performances in Ulster. Like, we go back to the Armagh game, they came with a system that nearly worked, and likewise against Donegal, albeit, if Shea Miller manages to get it past Sean Patton, it's hard to know whether they'll won or not. But again, I think a lot of credit has to go to Conor Laverty and Kieran Mina and the management team, Mickey Donnelly, Decky Morgan. They've got a very strong management team there. So they got things right on so many, aspects. But now they were really looking forward to all Ireland series. They felt that their time in the Tailteann Cup had been and gone. So on yesterday's game, I think Down's running game was scary. I think everybody knows their mobility, and I know their strength and conditioning man, Aaron Bradley. He's from Ballinascreen across from us here at home, and they've obviously put on a mountain of work. You think about Danny McGill, Rooney, Keelan Dock, Daniel Guinness. They've got so much mobility going through that middle, and albeit Sean only watched the highlights from it, but they were just relentless in those runs, and probably Daniel Guinness's goal summed that up. But I think a lot of credit has to go to them, because they went from, getting the game plan up where it was going to contain Donegal for long periods, and then they went to Clare, and they seemed to, you need to ask the management themselves, but they seemed as if they were really, really going for it. And like Clare, I go back to last year's Munster final when they asked Kerry a fair decent set of questions last year. And then this year, albeit like the game was over after 5 minutes, but they still were able to rattle off a decent second half performance against the Kerry team, who'll be very much in the big conversation at the end of the year. So it definitely was a big game. I expected Down to win it. 327 says an awful lot about them, but more so just the way they've went about it. And like I said it on this podcast before, if as a county they could develop a few big men around the middle, that would make an awful difference. And if you go back to the Donegal game where like they carved off one decent goal chance, but they weren't able to make it count, albeit Clare's defence is nowhere near as resolute as Donegal's, but they just looked very, very I don't know, incisive and also just like clinical, and that probably summed them up. But a great result, and like it was brilliant to hear Damien Donohoe's enthusiasm there, talking about Cavan. Like it's hard to beat the passion that this brings out. But there's another group where it's not the group where Louth or Monaghan are in.
Yeah.
So that's wide open now, and you would imagine that Laverty and the guys going up the road in the bus will be thinking, well, we could beat Louth, we could beat Monaghan. And all of a sudden, the relegation of Division 3 is very much in the history now. They'll obviously have to dig into that at some point, but you know they've given themselves a real chance of maybe even winning the group, finishing second in the group. So I'm sure. I was listening to a podcast last week, and they were talking about it. Wasn't their own podcast, so I was on that as well. But I just remember somebody saying, I can't remember who it was, but they says Down support was just abysmal. They didn't follow the team at all. So you just hope now that on the back of their under-20 success, you know, dancing with the big dogs for a while and not, showing them respect, but getting stuck under them, and then now going to Ennis. Like I said, like what did John Clark say? Tough place to go, long journey, and they score 327. So I think it's time now that the Down people really get behind this team, because the management team have obviously. That's two big results in Ulster that they've lost, and Conor Davidy's come out with the same statement. We spent all week preparing for that game, Armagh and Donegal, so they're obviously putting the hard yards, and the players are sticking with them. So it's probably time that the Down public just get out and get to these games. So massive result for Down.
Now, I suppose just on the group, we spoke to Damien Donohoe about Cavan, that they're more or less through to at least the preliminary quarter-final. Down's in the exact same boat, and I think Louth have to come to Newry, and Down will have no fear of Louth. I think Louth only beat them by a point in the league, and they've Monaghan in a neutral venue in the last round, and Down already beat Monaghan in the league this year. So Down, like, so early on in the groups, I know it's only week one, but they're maybe looking at that top spot as a realistic possibility for them.
Yeah, I think they've Louth on Saturday week, and I'm really looking forward to that one, because Louth's tails are up. They're in All Ireland under 20 final, and they won the first Leinster title in 68 years. So they'll bring a massive crowd to Park Esther, no doubt about it. So as Mal was chatting about the Down support there, it'd be good to see Down match them in that respect. But yeah, you're dead right. It's a very interesting group, actually. I suppose before the group stages, there were a few slightly disparaging comments about maybe the relative quality of that particular group, because you probably wouldn't see any of them as maybe contenders for the big prize at the end of the year. But they're Monaghan, Down and Louth are all well. I know Down were relegated from Division 3, but Louth and Monaghan are having very good seasons, and you can see Down's progress, if nothing else. So it is a particularly interesting group, I think.
And now, just on the Talton Cup for Monaghan, picked up a 219-7 win over Longford. And I suppose this was an important one for them, having lost at home last week to Carlow. So it just gets Fermanagh back on track again. Having lost a game, top spots maybe out of the question, but it leaves them that they're not at the bottom of the group.
Yeah, I was very surprised that they lost to Carlow, to be honest, particularly after they ran down so close. They should have won that game, as I think even Down people would acknowledge. And Kieran Donnelly wasn't a very happy man after the game. And Kieran's usually he's not the most animated fella. He's pretty straightforward. But he was saying that Fermanagh really lacked any sort of edge against Carlow. So they obviously got that edge back at the weekend. And they're back in the hunt, so to speak. Sean, it was a very important one. If they had lost that one, they were in bother.
Well, unfortunately for Antrim, they picked up. They were beaten on home turf by 8 points by Limerick, and like Niall said about Fermanagh, if Fermanagh had lost, they were in a bit of trouble. Antrim are in that bit of trouble now that they have to take on London, I think, in the last round just to stay in the race for the Talton Cup.
Yeah, that's two disappointing results. And I remember talking to Dermot McAleese on the pitch, like within about a minute of, or a couple of minutes of that Armagh game, and they were just saying we have to give this Tottenham Cup a real go. And we were on here saying the same. Like for me, people turn their nose up at the Tottenham Cup, but I think teams are in it have to go to win it. Like look at Down, it's done them no harm, for example. But that's really disappointing, those results. And then they've obviously got relegation in the middle of it as well. So it's going to be a tough place over the next few training sessions for Antrim. They're going to have to go and win that game. There's just no other way around it. You can be downhearted all you want, but you have to go and get a result to try and finish that season to see can you get a preliminary quarter final. And who knows? Like look at Cavan, for example. Like Damien O'Donoghue's as Cavan as they come, and even he didn't see that coming. So Antrim as a county, like they rightly fought for the Corrigan card so much. And Sean, we were both there that day. Like they brought so much. What did we say on here? Imagine those performances. They would never have been relegated, but they haven't backed that up. So now they're actually probably in a tighter corner than they were going to Corrigan now, needing that result. So it's probably down to the 5 or 6 leaders in around the group to just say, look, lads, we need to win this game, and we need to win it in any which way we can. And then whatever happens after the season's over, I suppose Division 4 will be the big focus to come back out, but they just need, by hook or by crook, to get a result. And I think the players owe it to themselves to get that result, and hopefully they do.
Now, with the two ladies' finals at the weekend too, Cavan won the Ulster Intermediate final while Antrim won the Ulster Junior. Two different games, I suppose. Cavan eased to the title while Antrim had to work for it.
Yeah, Antrim were pushed all the way by Derry, and they eventually collect their 6th title at this level, and credit to Antrim, but credit to Derry as well, because the ladies' team struggled quite a bit in recent years, just to pick up wins here and there in Division 4, whereas it wasn't that long ago, Antrim, as I recall, being at the game, Antrim beat Tyrone in Ulster Intermediate final just a couple of years ago, so Antrim are probably useless at this stage, so it was good from a neutral perspective to see Derry put up a good fight. Another final, Cavan ran red against Down. They scored 6 goals. It wasn't much of a contest in that respect, but I suppose the story coming out of that game is the progress Cavan ladies are making. They achieved the promotion from relegation or promotion from Division 3 early in the year. Hell of a lot of good young players coming through, have won all Ireland titles down through the underage ranks, so they could be one to watch out for, as potentially, I suppose, the Ulster title at senior level has been shared between Antrim between Armagh and Donegal, and for years now, and it'd be good to see another contender, if you know what I mean, Sean.
Yeah, possibly that's where Cavan are looking in the next year or two, possibly.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have our hurling results now, and then we'll move on to our highlights of the week. So, on the hurling front, Antrim suffered a 627 to 114 defeat to Galway in the Leinster Championship. In the Joe McDonagh Cup, Down give themselves a fighting chance of staying up as they beat Kerry 226 to 219. In the Christy Ring Cup, Derry qualified for the final, and they beat Wicklow 230 to 113, while Meath and Donegal, they played Meath 314, Donegal 028, and London beat Tyrone 420 to 113. So that's London and Derry both qualified for the Christy Ring Cup final. In the Nicky Rackard Cup, Fermanagh and Mayo drew 122 to 316, while Armagh finished their campaign with a win, beating Sligo by 1 point, not 23 to 313. Cavan had already qualified for the Larry Maher Cup, so they tasted defeat for the first time in the competition. They lost to Leitrim 110 to 215, while Monaghan's 220 to 220 draw with Longford was enough to see them qualify for the semi-finals, and they'll take on New York and they'll battle it out for a place in the final against Cavan. Our weekly highlights then, we'll start with Mal. We'll come to you for your player of the week, Mal, and you went with Danny McGill from Down.
Yeah, just I think he got me 60 points in the fantasy team. He was the sort of cheat code. He was listed as a defender, 7 points, including a few marks, and he seemed quite heavily involved in the game. And also, what I did notice from that Down and Donegal game in Ulster, where there was a really poor attendance, you could hear the Donegal management highlighting Danny McGill in every one of Down's kickouts. They obviously saw him as a real threat, and he was brilliant at the weekend, and probably just sums up that, as we talked about earlier, Sean, about the game. He just probably sums up that energy they have right now, and it'll be interesting to see. Imagine Danny McGill versus Craig Lennon in Park Esser, on Saturday week. So those type of battles will be will be great to look forward to.
And you went Cian Riley from Cavan.
Yeah, a lot of Cavan players played well, obviously, but I thought I'd give the nod to Cian. He had a really good game in defence, and he scored a great point as well, where he just tore up the pitch, So Cian it is for me.
I went with Marie O'Neill, Antrim ladies, scored two important goals. As Niall said, it was a fairly tight Ulster final contest against Derry, so her 2 goals were key. Result of the week, I went with Cavan and Mayo, and I think Damien highlighted how big of a result that was, so we don't have to touch too much more on it. And Niall, you went with the hurling result of Limerick against Cork.
Yeah, I think Limerick were out to prove a real point after losing last year's All-Ireland semi-final. The Cork, they blitzed them really, seemed to be as good as ever, and you'd have to make them probably favourites for All-Ireland in the back of that one, Sean.
And Mahal, you went with Downs win over Clare, which we spoke about already.
Yeah, very much so. Probably just the tally more than anything. I did expect them to win, and a great result.
And shock of the week, I went for Cavan and Mayo as my result of the week. Mal and Al have chosen Cavan's win over Mayo was their shock of the week. And again, Damien highlighted, I suppose, how big of a shock that was, even heading down the road. He didn't seem too confident of it, but Cavan returned home with a 3-point win. And shock of the week, I went for Antrim footballers losing to Limerick by 8 in Corrigan Park. It sets them back a wee bit, as we'd mentioned. It means that it's a winner takes all battle with London in round 3 to remain in the competition. Score of the week then, Mal, Daniel Guinness's goal. You mentioned it earlier on. I suppose it highlighted the impact of Down's running power.
Yeah, it was brilliant. He just took off, and I think it was maybe Oren Murdoch maybe linked in with him close to the area, but like the ground he covered, to have the energy to still kick the goal was brilliant, and a great finish, and as I say, sums him up. On my shock of the week, it's probably unfair in Cavan because it probably was a result of the week, but there was no other shocks, so I had to put them as shock, but they probably ticked both boxes there.
And now you went with Aaron Gillan for the Limerick Hurlers, again beating Cork and putting down that statement.
Yeah, brilliant goal. Kieran Lynch was phenomenal. He played on the ball right until the corner near where the sidelines met, and Aaron picked up the ball, and I think a mere mortal would have laid it back to someone else or tried to work a point, but he did this type of Cruyff turn type move to get away from his man, and then he just made a beeline towards goal and had her in the back of the net. It was unbelievable stuff, really.
I went with Paddy Lynch's score. Again, Damien highlighted the sort of fight he has had in his hands the last 12 months to get back and to come off the bench and kick a score in such an important game, an important win. Was a big one for Paddy Lynch. Unsung hero of the week, I went for Pearse McCrickard from the Down Hurlers, top scored for them in their win over Kerry. And as it mentioned, it gives them a realistic fighting chance heading into the last weekend of staying in the Joe McDonagh Cup. Ryan Lyons for Fermanagh then, Niall, was your unsung hero of the week?
Yeah, I thought I'd give Ryan a shout out. He scored 3 points in play, and he said, I suppose it's been a tough year for the Lions family with the death of Ryan's brother Mark, so it's nice to see him playing well.
And Patrick Turner from the Derry Hurlers, Mal, that was your unsung hero?
Yeah, he was. Good shout on Pearse actually, because Tom McGrattan's out injured and he's very much their key man up front. But Patrick Turner, he's been brilliant every time I've saw him in defence for Derry this year, and he's had his injury problems, but even at the weekend there, he was just making really good interceptions, and it was actually a brilliant performance from Derry. And now he gets a chance now to go to Croke Park to try and compete for a title at Croke Park. But had a great season for Swatra, and he's carried it into his county.
So that's all we have for today's show, folks. We'll be back on Thursday, and again, we'll be looking forward to all the group games that are coming up. There's two huge Ulster ones. There's Donegal against Tyrone and Armagh against Derry, so they'll be the main focus, but we'll cover everything as we usually do. So that'll be Thursday. We'll be back, and then once again with our review show next Monday as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to Damien for coming on board and giving us his thoughts on Cavan's win, and thanks to Mal and Nell for giving us the roundup of all the other action. So thanks, men. We'll chat to everybody on Thursday.
Thanks, Sean.